he was murdered. There were two stories. One was that the person who murdered him waited for him to enter the room and shot him multiple times. He emptied the clip. He shot 16 times. The story soon changed when forensic evidence came out.
3:28 in the morning, Dunkirk, Maryland, a quiet street called Lakeside Court. Most of the houses dark, most of the neighborhood asleep. A door code is entered. 4 numbers, familiar to the fingers that press them. A door unlocks without a sound of forced entry, without a struggle, without a single sign that anything is wrong. Shoes come off at the entrance, set down carefully, the kind of small, ordinary gesture a person makes when they plan to stay, when they expect to wake up here in the morning, when they still believe on some level that this is still a place they belong. Footsteps move up the stairs, slow, careful, the footsteps of someone trying not to wake a sleeping house. A bedroom door creaks open at the top of the stairs, and then everything changes. We are going to stop right there, because before we tell you what happens next, you need to understand who is walking through that door and why. Because this is not a story that starts with a gunshot. It is a story that starts 2 years earlier with a love story, and it ends with a woman explaining all of it on camera in a way that may have raised more questions about her than it ever answered. If true crime stories like this one keep you up at night wondering how something like this could happen, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next case breakdown. Now, back to the story. His name was Tyree Richardson, and before he was a headline, before he was a case number, before 16 shots ended his life in the span of 4 minutes, he was somebody's son, somebody's brother, and somebody's father. He was born on April 26, 2002, into a family that most people only see in movies. His parents, Lindsay and Roger Richardson, had been married for 25 years by the time Tyree was murdered, together long enough to raise 4 children in a house built on structure, discipline, and a kind of steady, unshakable love. Tyree was not their only child, but by every account, he was their heart, the one who carried both the ambition and the tenderness of that household out into the world with him. By the time he was 20 years old, Tyree had already built more than most people build in a lifetime. He was a rapper, performing under the name FSO Gunk, with several projects already released and a growing following that believed he was going somewhere. Music was only one piece of him. Tyree also owned a food truck business called Despot 301, and on top of that, he ran a dog breeding operation on the side. 3 separate ventures, 3 separate proofs that this was a young man who did not wait around for opportunity. He built it himself. Ambitious, driven, family-oriented, these are the words people used to describe Tyree Richardson, and they were true. But there is a harder truth sitting right underneath them. The same qualities that made Tyree remarkable were the same qualities that would eventually put him in danger, because Tyree believed in fighting for the people he loved, even when, especially when, they did not want to be saved. At the center of that fight was a woman named Autumn Anderson. Tyree met Autumn back in high school, and if you listen to the way people who knew them describe it, this was not some casual, forgettable teenage romance. This felt real. It felt like the beginning of something Tyree genuinely believed he was going to build his whole life around. Autumn, in her own words, has said she loved him too, especially in the good moments, and there were plenty of those. But underneath the good moments, this relationship was resting on ground that was never quite steady, not from the very beginning. We are not going to paint anyone in this story as simply good or simply evil, because the truth, as you are about to see, is far more complicated than that. But what we can tell you right now is this. Tyree and Autumn had a son together, a little boy named Cody, and everything Tyree did from that point forward, the money he spent, the patience he showed, the second and third and fourth chances he kept giving, all of it traced back to one single goal: giving his son the same kind of stable, loving home that he himself had grown up in. That is who was walking through that door at 3:28 in the morning. Not a stranger, not an intruder, a father, a son, an artist, a young man trying to hold together a family he believed was still worth saving. But here is where the story takes its first real turn. because this was not the first time someone tried to take Tyree's life. 2 years before that bedroom door opened for the last time, on the night of Tyree's 18th birthday, gunfire had already rung out in his direction once before, and only a small handful of people on this entire earth knew exactly where to find him that night. What happened on that birthday, and who may have known more than they ever admitted, is where we have to go next, because nothing about the night Tyree Richardson died makes full sense until you understand the warning that came 2 years before it. April 26, 2020, Tyree Richardson's 18th birthday, and by every outward measure, it looked like the perfect day. Autumn later described it in detail: an at-home massage booked just for him, a home-cooked brunch, gifts picked out with care, a family dinner that evening, and then, to close it all out, a night at the club, the kind of day that, on the surface, reads like a woman going all out for the man she loves. Perfect girlfriend behavior. At least that is how it was framed, but there is a detail sitting underneath all of that celebration that does not add up. Not one of Tyree's friends showed up that day. Not one. Not a single friend at his 18th birthday, and more strangely than that, his best friend Boog, a young man who actually lived in the same house as Tyree and Autumn, was nowhere to be found the entire day, absent from start to finish, on a day that should have been full of the people closest to Tyree. We are not going to tell you what that means. We are simply going to ask you to hold on to it, because in a story like this, the things that are missing often end up mattering just as much as the things that are there. Later that night, after the club, Autumn describes the moment everything shifted. Tyree pulled the car into a parking spot, put it in park, and instead of heading inside, he started rolling a joint. Nothing unusual. He leaned against the trunk of the car to smoke it while Autumn sat inside, still visible through the window. And then, in her own words, it happened almost instantly. A fast motion past the car, then another, gunfire, an ambush. Someone had been waiting. Tyree survived that night, but barely, and the questions that came out of it were immediate, because this was not a random robbery. This was not a stray bullet from some unrelated dispute. This was precise. This was timed. This was someone who knew exactly where Tyree would be with his guard down. So how did that happen? At the time, according to the story that has circulated since, only 2 people on Earth knew Tyree's exact location that night, his girlfriend Autumn and one close friend, and yet somehow an armed attacker showed up at precisely the right moment. Tyree grew suspicious after that night, understandably so, but he made a choice that so many people in his position make. He let it go. He stayed. Because love, real or not, has a way of talking us out of the most obvious red flags, and Tyree wanted so badly to believe that the life he was building with Autumn was real. There is one more piece to this early mystery worth sitting with. In the weeks after the ambush, word spread through the neighborhood and social media that Boog, the friend who mysteriously vanished on Tyree's birthday, had been dropped off near their neighborhood by someone with direct ties to the person who tried to kill Tyree that night. To be clear, no one was ever arrested or charged in connection with that birthday shooting. It remains an open and unresolved thread in Tyree's story. And we want to be upfront about that. We are not here to accuse anyone of something never proven in a court of law. We are here to lay out what is known and let you sit with the same uneasy questions Tyree's own family has sat with for years. What we do know is that surviving that night did not slow Tyree down. If anything, it seemed to push him further into trying to build the family he wanted. Because roughly a year later, Autumn became pregnant with his child. For Tyree, this should have been the beginning of everything he had been working toward. A real family, a son to raise the way he had been raised, a chance to prove that all of it, the ambush, the suspicion, the doubt, had been worth pushing through. But this is also where a second man enters the story, quietly in the background, while Tyree was busy trying to hold his family together. His name was Terrence Kenneth Yancey, known to the people around him as Trey, and according to Autumn's own later statements, her relationship with Trey had already been building for months during this exact period. The same months Tyree was trying to make things work, the same months Autumn was carrying his child. Picture the shape of it now. A young man fighting to save a family he believed was still worth saving, another man quietly falling for a woman who already belonged to someone else, and a woman in the middle, moving between both of them, appearing to choose neither, while quietly choosing one. The money tells its own part of this story too. While Autumn's beauty business shut down during the pandemic, Tyree was the one covering her bills, paying for cosmetic procedures, buying her cars, making sure she had everything she needed, all while, unknown to him, she was already building a future that did not include him. There is a recorded conversation from this exact period of their relationship, a conversation that has since become one of the most talked about pieces of evidence in the entire case. And if you listen to it, you will hear something that is hard to unhear. A young man completely unraveling, begging, apologizing, promising to be better, while the woman on the other end of that conversation stays cold, clipped, and strangely distant, giving almost nothing back. That conversation is where we have to go next, because it does not just show you a relationship falling apart, it shows you exactly how far apart Tyree and Autumn already were, months before a single shot was ever fired in that bedroom on Lakeside Court. There is a recording that sits at the emotional center of this entire case, a phone conversation between Tyree and Autumn from the spring of 2022, and if you listen to it, it is hard not to feel something crack in your chest. Tyree is the one talking, mostly, pouring himself out, telling her he really cares, telling her he thinks they can still work it out, telling her he does not want to be with anybody else, telling her he is sorry, over and over, for things he never fully names, just that he has done a lot, and he knows it, and he wants to fix it. He tells her it is empty without her, that he spent an entire day locked away in his room, that he does not want to keep losing pieces of his life, his house, his time with his son, all of it slipping away while they keep breaking up and getting back together and breaking up again. He is not asking for much, he says, just for her to try. And on the other end of that call, Autumn stays cold, clipped, distant. When he brings up rumors of her being on the phone with someone else, she denies it flatly, tells him he must have misheard, draws a hard line around her own behavior, even as she reminds him of everything he has done wrong in the relationship. At one point, Tyree asks her directly, other than material things, "What do you actually offer in this relationship?" And her answer is one word: support. And he pushes back immediately, reminding her that she cheated on him through her entire pregnancy, reminding her that she hit him days earlier, and somehow, even in that moment, he is the one still trying to hold the whole thing together. We want to be honest with you here, because this case is not a simple story of one innocent person and one guilty person. This was a relationship with real dysfunction running in both directions. Tyree was not faithful either, and there was real conflict on both sides, and that matters, because it is what makes this story human instead of a cartoon. But here's the detail that changes everything about how you should hear that conversation. At no point does Autumn ever mention that she has already been seeing someone else. Not once. She lets Tyree apologize, lets him blame himself, lets him beg for a future that, as far as we know now, she had already quietly decided did not include him. By June of 2022, their son Cody was born. And if you are waiting for this to be the moment things finally settle down, it is not. Instead, the baby becomes one more point of conflict. Autumn moves out to her mother's house in Dunkirk, Maryland, while Tyree, devoted as ever, keeps showing up. This detail matters more than it might seem right now, so hold on to it. Tyree still had the door code to that house. He still came and went to see his son whenever he wanted. Nothing about walking through that door was unusual for him. It was still, in every practical sense, a place he belonged. Meanwhile, according to Autumn's own later statements, her relationship with Trey kept deepening in the background. They were spending nights together, quietly building the foundation of what she saw as her real future, while Tyree remained locked into the past she was already leaving behind. Think about the shape of that triangle for a moment. Tyree was the past, Trey was the future, and baby Cody sat right in the middle, the bridge connecting both worlds, whether anyone wanted him to be or not. The final week before the murder was its own kind of unraveling. Tyree calling, texting, trying to arrange time with his son. Autumn swinging between warm and accommodating one day, cold and dismissive the next. the kind of inconsistency that keeps a person hoping even when every signal says they should stop. On June 6th, records show Tyree had already moved out after learning Autumn had been talking to Trey. He went to stay with his parents, but he left things behind: clothes, shoes, small pieces of a life he was not ready to fully let go of. Then came June 12th, the night before everything ended. Autumn picked her son up from Tyree earlier that day so the baby could travel to Florida with her mother. And throughout the day, she and Tyree continued messaging back and forth, coordinating schedules. Nothing about the day suggested anything unusual was coming. That evening, between 10 and 11 at night, Autumn picked Trey up and brought him back to her mother's house. The two of them spent hours there with Autumn's sister and a friend, drinking, talking, easing into the kind of night that felt, to everyone in that house, completely ordinary. Around 2:50 in the morning, Autumn and Trey went upstairs together and lay down in her bedroom. At 3:28 in the morning, everything changed. Tyree used the same door code he had always used to let himself into a house he still considered, on some level, a place where he belonged. He took his shoes off at the door, a small, quiet gesture that tells you everything about his state of mind in that moment. He was not walking in expecting a confrontation. He was walking in expecting to stay the night and to be there for his son in the morning. What waited for him upstairs would end his life in less than 4 minutes, and what happened inside that room, the shots, the silence afterward, and the story that would later be told about it, is where we have to go next. The bedroom door opens and everything Tyree believed he was walking into disappears in an instant. Instead of a quiet house and a sleeping family, he finds Autumn in bed with Trey, and for a moment, before anything else happens, there is just that: a young man standing in a doorway, absorbing the one image he never let himself fully imagine, even after everything, even after the suspicion, even after the doubts he had carried for 2 years. What happened in the seconds after that is where the two accounts of this night start to pull apart. According to Autumn, she and Trey were asleep when Tyree came in. She says she jumped up at the very first gunshot, ran toward the door, and saw Tyree's silhouette falling into the room as the shots continued. She has said she believed in that moment that Trey might think she had let Tyree into the house herself, so she ran. According to Trey, the story is different. He has said he grabbed a black handgun, one that was concealed under a pillow on the bed, and opened fire on a shadowy figure that had suddenly appeared in the doorway, believing, in his own telling, that he was defending himself and Autumn from a dangerous intruder. Whichever version you believe, one fact is not in dispute. In the span of about 4 minutes between 3:28 and 3:32 in the morning, Terrence Kenneth Yancey fired 16 shots at Tyree Richardson. The autopsy would later reveal a detail that complicates the self-defense story significantly. 12 of those 16 shots struck Tyree in the back, not the chest, not facing forward, the back, the kind of detail that raises hard questions about whether the person being shot was ever actually a threat in that room, or whether he was already turning away, already falling, already trying to get out. We are not going to tell you what that means for certain. That is what a jury would eventually be asked to decide, but we want you to sit with that number for a second. 12 shots to the back, 16 shots total, fired in a house where other family members were sleeping just down the hall, in a quiet residential neighborhood where children lived on the same street. What happened immediately after the shooting is, in some ways, just as unsettling as the shooting itself. It was not Autumn who called 911, it was her sister, Cherry, and the recording of that call has since become one of the most talked about pieces of audio in the entire case. You can hear the 911 operator walking Cherry through CPR instructions in real time, telling her to lay Tyree flat on the floor, to place her hands on his chest, to start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, keep going, you are doing great. While that is happening, while a family member is on the floor trying to keep Tyree alive with her bare hands, following instructions from a stranger on the phone, Autumn can reportedly be heard elsewhere in the recording, calling for the family dog, "Come on, baby, come on." The kind of detail that once you hear it, you cannot unhear, and once the public heard it, it changed the way an entire online audience saw her, We are simply laying out what is on that recording. We will let you draw your own conclusions about what it means, but it is worth noting that this single detail, more than almost anything else in the case, is what turned public sympathy sharply against her. Trey did not stay to see any of this play through. He fled the house immediately. He ran past Autumn in the hallway as she was heading toward her sister's room, fumbling with his shoes, asking where his phone was, and according to some accounts, he left wearing a pair of Autumn's pink pajama pants in the panic of the moment, grabbing whatever was closest. A massive manhunt followed, K-9 units combing the area through the night, and within roughly 24 hours, Terrence Yancey was located and captured hiding in a wooded area near Dunkirk, not far from where the shooting had taken place. Here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Prosecutors offered Yancey a plea deal, somewhere between 3 and 8 years in prison, a deal that, for a man facing murder charges, most legal experts would call remarkably lenient. Yancey turned it down. By every account, he genuinely believed he had done nothing wrong. In his mind, he was the one protecting Autumn from a dangerous ex-boyfriend. He felt justified emptying that clip into an unarmed man standing in a doorway, and that belief, whether you find it understandable or not, was strong enough that he chose to gamble everything on a trial rather than accept a deal that would have kept him locked up for less than a decade. It is a decision that would end up exposing far more evidence to the public and to Tyree's family than a quiet plea deal ever could have. In less than 5 minutes, on a quiet street in a quiet Maryland neighborhood, a father, a business owner, a rising artist, and a son who had already survived one attempt on his life 2 years earlier, was gone, and the two people left standing in that room, along with the woman who ran from it, would spend the next year telling very different versions of what happened inside it, versions that a Calvert County jury would soon be asked to weigh against 300 pieces of physical evidence and decide once and for all which one came closest to the truth. 7 days, that is how long the trial of Terrence Kenneth Yancey lasted in the circuit court for Calvert County, beginning in April of 2023, and by the time it was over, the jury had heard a version of this story far more detailed than anything that had circulated online in the months before. Yancey walked into that courtroom facing 11 separate charges, including first-degree murder, and his defense rested on one argument, that he had acted in self-defense, that a shadowy figure appeared in a doorway in the middle of the night, and that he reacted the only way he believed he could. The prosecution told a different story, one built on physical evidence rather than fear. Over 300 pieces of it, presented piece by piece to a jury that had to decide whether firing 16 rounds at a man, 12 of them into his back, could ever reasonably be called self-defense. The bullet trajectories became one of the most damaging pieces of testimony in the trial. Some shots, according to forensic analysis, were fired downward, the kind of angle that suggests a person standing over someone already on the ground, already wounded, no longer capable of posing any threat at all. The homeowner testimony mattered just as much because it directly contradicted the idea that Tyree was some unwelcome intruder that night. Witnesses confirmed that Tyree actually lived in that home, that he had every reason to walk through that door the way he always had, using the code he had always used, expecting the life he had always known. Phone records added another layer, showing ongoing communication between Tyree and Autumn right up until the night of the shooting, coordinating schedules, talking about their son. Nothing in those messages suggesting Tyree was some dangerous ex who needed fearing. When the verdict came down, it was not the outcome either side fully expected. The jury acquitted Yancey of first and second-degree murder, but found him guilty on every other charge: voluntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, and multiple firearms violations. For those unfamiliar with what that distinction means, a murder conviction requires the jury to believe the killing was intentional and premeditated. Voluntary manslaughter is different. It acknowledges a killing that happened in the heat of the moment, without that same premeditation, but still without legal justification. The jury did not believe Yancey planned to kill Tyree that night, but they also did not believe firing 16 shots into him was reasonable or justified. Sentencing came on July 28, 2023. Judge Mark Chandley handed down 18 years of active incarceration. And because manslaughter is a crime of violence, Yancey would serve at least half of that sentence before he could be considered for parole. The prosecutor's words that day still carry weight, describing Yancey's actions as unreasonable and excessive, telling the courtroom that Tyree's body had simply been torn apart, and noting that after the shooting, Yancey showed no remorse. He ran, hiding in the woods for nearly a full day rather than face what he had done. For Tyree's family, the sentence brought a kind of closure, but not peace, because a courtroom verdict can tell you what happened inside that room. It cannot tell you why, and it cannot answer the question sitting underneath this entire case since the very beginning. That question came roaring back into public conversation when Autumn decided to speak publicly on social media, laying out her version of events in her own words, in her own voice, in the flat, steady tone that so many viewers online could not stop talking about. This is where we have to return to the very question we opened this story with. A woman trying to clear her own name may have ended up raising more questions about herself than she ever answered. Her precise recollection of certain details, her emotional flatness while describing the father of her child being shot 16 times in front of her, the moment on the 911 recording where she can be heard calling for the family dog rather than tending to a dying man. None of it proves anything legally, but all of it left a permanent mark on how the public came to see her. And underneath all of it, that first unresolved thread from 2 years earlier never went away. The ambush on Tyree's 18th birthday, the friend who mysteriously vanished that day, the shooter who somehow knew exactly where to find him. No one was ever charged, no one was ever formally connected to Autumn in that earlier attack, and we want to be honest here, that case remains open, unresolved, and unproven. We are not going to hand you an accusation the evidence itself never made. What we can leave you with is something quieter, and in some ways, heavier. A phone call that surfaced after Tyree's death, between his family and Autumn's mother, both sides trying to navigate what comes next for a little boy named Cody, who will grow up knowing his father only through photographs, music he left behind, and stories other people will tell him. So we will leave you with the same question Tyree's family has likely asked themselves every single day since. If Tyree had known everything we now know, would he have still walked through that door that night, hoping, the way he always did, that this time, things would finally be different? The legal case is closed. Terrence Yancey is serving his sentence, but for the people who loved Tyree Richardson, the real case, the one about trust, about warning signs ignored, about a love that cost him everything, may never truly be closed at all. Thank you for watching. If you have your own theory about what really happened that night, leave it in the comments below. And if you want more true crime breakdowns like this one, make sure you are subscribed because we are just getting started.